I think perfectionism is blunting our success. And I mean, I was saying it to look good at that time, but now I realize that when someone strives to be perfect, including myself, I think that's the ultimate admission that you haven't accepted yourself for who you are and where you're at and where you want to go.
Welcome to Success Reimagined. I am Dr. Amna Shabir, your host on this journey to thrive at the intersection of ambition and wellness. In every episode, I'll help you challenge outdated definitions of success, discover practical tools and strategies for growth without compromising your well-being. I am so glad you've joined me. Let's reimagine what's possible together. Today, I have the honor of welcoming Dr. Hala Sabry, who is a board-certified emergency medicine physician and the founder of the Physician Moms Group, an online community that has grown to over 113,000 members globally, continues to grow since its inception in 2014. In 2016, recognizing the need to honor the contributions of women in medicine, she established National Women Physicians Day. Dr. Sabry also serves as a council member for the National Women's History Museum, contributing to initiatives that highlight women's contributions throughout history. She is a proud mother of 5 children, including 2 sets of twins. She is an inspiration to all of us. Welcome, Dr. Sabry.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm excited about your project. I feel like it's going to be helpful for every woman out there that is thinking that they want it all, or that I have it all, or that you have it all. And they're just looking for kind of resources of how to do it. So
Yes.
I'm excited. Yeah.
Well, I love that energy. As always, you bring in the fire. So I'm going to dive right in. What does the word perfectionism mean to you?
Usually I don't get these questions before podcasts. And when I get them, I don't read them because I want my answers to be really authentic. But I did look at it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've really tried to define perfect. And in fact, it's so funny when someone asks me how I'm doing, just like normal things, like my patients or my colleagues at work, hey, how are you? I always say perfect. And they're always taken aback, oh, perfect. What's perfect about your life? And I'm like, what's not? What is not perfect, And, this is so different than how I was, say, 20, 25 years ago. I remember when I was interviewing at medical school, how they ask you, what's a worst quality or what's something that you could work on or what one of your strengths, right? Or weaknesses, rather. And I would be like, oh, perfectionism, because I thought that was a really good answer. But actually, I think it's true. I think perfectionism is blunting our success. And I mean, I was saying it to look good at that time, but now I realize that when someone strives to be perfect, including myself, I think that's the ultimate admission that you haven't accepted yourself for who you are and where you're at and where you want to go. And so for me, I think perfectionism is really how you define it. And I think you kind of have to make it tangible. And I've just decided over the years that where I'm at in my stage of life, what I'm doing is perfect for me right now. And so, so I don't really know how to define it for everybody. But I think if I had to give a blanket definition, it's whatever thoughts that you have to make it tangible for you to actually achieve. I swear this is my last example. We're going to go on to the next question. But for those of you guys that have kids or you remember swimming lessons when you were little, and this is what kind of reminds me of, I saw it with my kids, but I remember feeling like this too. The instructor will stand at a distance from the kids. They'll usually be on the stairs or something like that, somewhere that's safe. And they're like, okay, swim to me. And it's not really a far distance, And then the kid's a little timid, a little shy. And they're like, okay, right? And so they go. And then they're like, oh, that's good. That's all right. That's awesome. So they put him back, right? And then they move backwards and they increase the distance, right? And then at one point, if they think that they can swim a little bit more, they are like, okay, just swim to me. And then they start moving back. So they move the target, right? They move that safety of oh, when I get there, I'm going to be safe. When I get there, I'm going to have achieved. And that builds distrust. Oh, you're not going to move, right? You're not, and you're kind of scared. How much am I going to have to keep swimming? Am I going to run out of air? Am I going to run out of energy, right? And these kids are terrified, and they'll always ask, you're not going to move, right? Or how much are you going to move? Or they're anticipating that you're going to move, right? And I feel that usually those lessons are happening at 2, 3, 4. But I feel we do that when we're 30, 40, 50. We're just doing that. And that builds mistrust with ourselves. So I feel perfectionism can be defined and it can be used for good. But I think oftentimes successful women that are high achieving use it against themselves.
That was such a profound way to describe it. And I would say one of the most vivid examples that I have heard so far in the interviews that I've been conducting. It's this, yeah, I feel like I constantly move backwards and I really am eroding that trust that's hopefully building at some point. But then there you go. It's everything just falls back to zero.
Yeah. And, and backwards is not bad and it's not negative. Like, here's another example of backwards and how backwards can be used for good. Have you ever overstuffed a dresser drawer with clothes? I mean, I have. I literally went to go dresser shopping this last weekend to get a bigger dresser. And sometimes when the dresser is stuck, like you could keep trying to pull out the drawer, right? You can keep tugging at it, right? And that when that doesn't work, what do?
We gotta take things out.
Yeah. Or you put it back in and then you try to pull it out, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe if I push it back in and pull it out, like whatever will stuck. So backwards is not bad. Sometimes backwards is exactly where you need to go. So that's another example of like perfectionism isn't always forward movement. It's not always linear. It's not always what you expect it to be. I mean, going back to my first example, some of the greatest swimmers have these tragic, traumatic examples of they almost drowned when they're little and they decided to make that their mission in life, right? Is to perfect swimming, right? I don't know. I just feel like everything happens for a reason. And it's really your thoughts about the event or your thoughts about where you're at that propel what your next step is.
It's interesting how you in the start also mentioned that it's what it means to you. And that's why when I asked the questions, like, this is a blanket description, but this is the actual meaning that I'm ascribing to the word perfectionism. So let me just ask again, do you think you're a perfectionist? And why or why not? Where would you feel that on the spectrum?
Yeah. I don't think I'm a perfectionist anymore. I think I'm a retired perfectionist. Of course, I love success, but I also love failure because failure is the road to success, right? And so I guess if I have to give myself a number, if I have to, like maybe just right in the middle, because I don't know, it's funny. My dad used to always tell me, like, my dad was a doctor and he was an immigrant to this country. And it's funny. He would always like be like, "Oh, what'd you get on your test?" Like, "Oh, were you like the number one in the class?" And of course, he was number one, and all his friends were number one, and they're all the same age. So there must have been so many schools in his home country, right? That they're all like number one, right? But at one point, he told me he's like, "It's okay not to be the best. It's okay to just strive for being in the middle. There's always going to be someone who has more than you, and there's always going to be someone who has less than you." And so I think with perfect, like, how are you defining that? Like, really, like not only for yourself, but what's the bar of measurement? Someone else is someone listening to this and going, oh, I haven't created a national holiday. Therefore, I haven't contributed as much to society as Hala, right? Or someone saying, oh, that person has a better relationship than me, a better marriage or better kids or more money, or like, how are you defining what perfect is, right? So I think for me, I would say just stay in the middle because I'm okay with being mediocre. I think I'm okay with that. And I think that's perfect. So I would say a 5 if you had to like nail me down to a number. So yeah, 5.
We'll take a 5. I was listening to one of your earlier interviews, and you talk about when you started PMG. I felt so connected when you gave this example. That's why I really want to highlight it. That you feared publicly sharing that you were struggling with finding childcare, you were struggling with finding a nanny, and you were worried that people are going to confuse that situation, or rather, not confuse, like they're going to actually judge your clinical skills and competency as a leader based off of your childcare struggles. And the reason I bring this example is I really struggled with learning how to drive a car. And I said, if I don't know how to drive a car, how can I save a life? Like the both are equivalent. Where does perfectionism in these experiences is almost like holding back? And I would love to hear your thoughts surrounding this comment.
Yeah, I think it's really wise when people are scared of driving because I feel like a car is like it's a tool that can hurt so many people, including yourself. So I think when people are scared of driving, I actually have a lot of respect for them. And that's as an emergency medicine physician that sees a lot of accidents. So I just want to say, I think that's perfect. But yeah, I think that there is this expectation. I mean, I think I grew up with my dad being a doctor, and being a doctor in the 80s is a little bit different than now. There's a lot of similarities, but in the 80s, like you were the pinnacle of society, like you were the model citizen, right? Like you did nothing wrong. You did everything right. You were creme de la creme, right? And so growing up like that and having that vision and that idea of doctors myself, not that my dad was perfect, but Like, I just remember him saying things like, oh, we can't do that. Like, we have to present ourselves a certain way. Like, and I just felt that, like, there was like nonverbal cues to that. So then all of a sudden I'm a doctor and I can't figure out how to have childcare. And my literal job is to save your life. My literal job is to bring you back from the dead if you come in dead. And I was like, well, if I can't figure out how to hire a nanny, how will people think that? I mean, they're very different skill sets, right? Like, very different. But I will say proudly, 10 years after, I really can't give the best advice of hiring a nanny. Like, I can give you my lived experience, but what's right for me is going to be different than for other people. So yeah, I have some experience to go off of. But I think just being aware of what you don't know is a sign of wisdom. And I think I didn't harness it in that way. Instead, and same with you driving, right? Instead, I like shamed myself for like, oh, I don't know that yet. Well, of course I'm not supposed to know that yet. Like, nobody's ever taught me. I haven't gone through enough failures to know what was right or what was wrong or what was right for me or what do I even want. Maybe you learned how to drive or you have learned how to drive and you're like, I don't like it. Like, I'm going to go hire a driver. I'm just going to Uber everywhere. That's fine too. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, yeah, we set up these expectations of what we should do or how we should be. And then we try to do that. And that's why I was saying that, like, we really have to make whatever that perfection is tangible and personal. It's not what you think is perfect. It's what, for me, but it's what I think is perfect for me. So yeah, there's a lot of people will have a lot of thoughts about what I do. They'll have good thoughts, they'll have bad thoughts. There's a lot of people who have a lot of criticism of what I do on a daily basis, from what I wear to what I say, what I support, what I don't, things like that. They'll have a lot of thoughts. And that's okay, that's their thought. And I could decide how much gravity I want to give to it. So I'm not saying ignore feedback. I'm not saying ignore other cues. Like, say, like, you like what somebody else is doing. Maybe that's a deep down desire that you want. And that's okay too. But I think at the end of the day, like, sitting back and being like, wait, do I want this for me? Or do I just like this for this other person? Right? Like, that's a little bit different. And I think that that's important. Going back to, the whole PMG thing, is that I just had to realize, like, it's okay that people might think I'm silly for not being able to hire a nanny. Maybe that's okay that they could be wrong about me, that if they do think, oh my gosh, if she can't hire a nanny, how could she be an ER doctor? Maybe that's okay that they're wrong about that. Because ultimately I know that one came with a lot of training and board certification, and the other one is like no training at all, like a fly by the seat of the pants. And every kid is so different, right? And so I think I just have to, like, accept that some people might think that. And maybe there are people out there, they're like, oh, that girl sounds like a mess. Like, she couldn't figure out how to hire a nanny, Maybe there are people that think like that. And I think that's okay. But the good thing is that I don't think like that anymore. Right? So I'm like, hey, yeah, of course I didn't know how to hire a nanny. Like, nobody ever taught me that. I didn't have somebody mentoring me how to do that. And even if they did, they're mentoring me on their lived experience, not my lived experience, right? And I never grew up with really anyone besides my mom and my grandmother taking care of me. And even if we did have nannies, my mom and grandma were there. Like, it wasn't like my mom didn't work outside of the house. So yeah, I don't have that same experience. And by me admitting where I'm not, created a movement in medicine. It created PMG, which is the largest women support group that exists in the world, right? So can you imagine, like, if each one of you, anybody that's listening, or even you, think about the thing that you have the most shame about. If you were to be able to be vulnerable and say that, how many people would you have rallying around you to make it better, or to change the narrative, or just support while you're going through that part of life?
There's so much in what you just said, because first of all, the normalizing of not knowing, and what I'm also gauging from your experience share, Dr. Sabry, is like this tremendous humility that, well, that worked for me. And still at this phase, you're saying like that might not work for somebody else. And I'm so tired of people just trying to lean into like, here's like 3 tips, tricks, and hacks, and like, go do that. And then the second thing I really absolutely want to highlight, this community that you have built by embracing something you're willing to ask help for. You're willing to say that, yeah, I'm not perfect in this specific thing. I just don't know. Like, let's leave the word perfect out of it. I just don't know how to. We're taking the example of like childcare right now. And just by accepting that, and the impact that PMG has created has been huge. It's hundreds and thousands, not just doctors, it's patients, it's communities that it has served and supported. And now you have over a decade of insight with all of this. So I really want to lean in a little bit more and ask you, from creating PMG, from all your other leadership roles, I know I only touched on a few. What do you think women of multiple different backgrounds really struggle when it comes to these themes of perfectionism and shame and the inability to ask for help. And maybe for the person who does judging, I know you talked about like how other people are saying this stuff, but at least you're not saying that to yourself anymore. Love to hear your thoughts.
Mhm. I mean, I think there are probably so many contributing factors to why we think this way. Personally, I think that many of us are in a generation where our parents or our grandparents did not work outside the home. And I think even if the person who's listening right now is not a woman and not a mom, like this is still applicable to you. But I think that as a parent, so everybody here that's listening has a parent, even if they're not in your life anymore, or you have mentors or people who act like your parents. And every person, I think it's a universal thing that every parent has is that in the majority of times that they want better for their kids than they had for themselves. Like it's just part of survival. Like you want your kids to survive. You want them to be independent. And so we're constantly like teaching our kids to not repeat the same mistakes that we did or to follow in the steps that created success, right? And I think that for many of us that, if you think about the history just in the United States, and I can't speak for other countries, but in the United States, like in 1973, women still needed their husbands to co-sign on a credit card. They couldn't buy houses on their own, right? So that's not a long time ago. And that generation of women, which most of us, that's our parents that are listening. And if you're a little younger, maybe your grandparents, they're working from that energy. Like, how can we make our women in our lineage or our men, whatever it may be, our kids more independent to build like more financial stability and wealth and things like that? That's in the back of every single family's like mind. So I see that all the time. And so we were taught since we're little, like nonverbal and verbal cues of like how to do that. Like I remember just giving examples of my life. Again, this may resonate with some of you and it may not. My mom was like, don't get married until you're done with your education. Don't have kids until you're done. Because these are things that she didn't do, right? She had kids at 19. She didn't finish her degree, right? And so she had a lot of regret. And so she saw like, okay, if you want to be independent and you don't want to depend on anybody else, whether that's, your partner, government, whatever it may be, like this is the path, like get yourself ready first. So I think we have a lot of that, especially even women. It's like we're so used to being not only compared to other women in the room, but men, and then being kind of also told that men's contributions are so much more. Like even there is a study by Save the Children that I quote a lot, and it's one of the backbones of the National Women History Museum that it came out in 2015, where young girls by the age of 8, they don't think that they're as valuable or as smart as boys, whether that's here in the United States or on the west coast of Africa and Sierra Leone. And the reason for that is when you open history books, whether it's here in the United States or anywhere else, it's his story. It's history. It's his story. They're telling his story through his eyes. Most of the history books are men. And even if you go to a museum, the women's contribution or the minorities' contribution, whether they're, Black, Indigenous, whatever it may be, they're usually in the back of the museum or on the side, or they have a little section, and the rest of it is very dominant white male. So every woman, whether you're a white woman or a BIPOC woman, like I think that we had been given so many cues that we have to work harder, double, to be shining, right? So a surprise that we're all striving for perfectionism since we're 8 years old. Or maybe at 8, we have decided that we're not going to be perfect and we just decide that we're stupid and we're not as good at math and all these other things, these perpetual kind of tropes that we have as women and girls. And we are going to allow men to be superior. And this is not about men versus women. It's not. This is just about how our self-concept, how we think about ourselves, right? So if we think we're perfect at 8, then we're more likely to think we're perfect at 35. But if we're always being told, you're not good enough yet, you'll never be, right? That's going to go on later. And then that imperfection thought at 8 leads to mid-career crisis at 35, which is a real thing, where these very high-achieving women, they go and super like overachieve everything that little 8-year-old girl was told that maybe she couldn't, or inspired to do. Then she becomes a doctor, a lawyer, something with multiple degrees. And then she's questioning herself 7 or 10 years after her training, like, oh, like, Is this all that I'm going to do in life is just achieve? Like, where am I at? Like, am I even happy? Is this all that's going to happen? Like, and so you have like this era of dissatisfaction. So I think that perfectionism is really dangerous if we weaponize it against ourselves. But I think it could be very inspiring. So it's all our thoughts on, kind of where we are at on that spectrum.
That study and talks that are similar to that really break my heart because right now I am a girl mom. I got 2 little girls, and I can already see this behavior show up in my 8.5-year-old where she just came home with this score in which she got a 99 out of 100. And she's like, don't even look at that. I know I was stupid or something like that. She used the S word. And I was just shocked because that's the antithesis. I'm trying to break that cycle here. I'm not communicating verbally or other ways, but then what do I know? Maybe I am. Who knows? And so that creates a lot of point for reflection for me as we talk about that. And you're right. Those firm beliefs that we start holding on to and start accruing at a younger age are all going to show up forward. As you talk about your role and working and doing a lot of this incredible work surrounding women empowerment, as a minority woman, I would love to hear your thoughts. Was there a different brand of perfectionism that you felt in terms of pressure to perform, to achieve? And I know that having physician parents, this always adds a little bit, I wouldn't say negative, but it definitely adds a whole different kind of pressure. I feel like I was born with MD written on my forehead.
Yeah, I think a lot of us with immigrant parents, it's a very common thing, whether you're a girl or a boy, that you're immigrant parents, whether they are doctors, lawyers, or engineers, they encourage you to be one of those three things. Mainly because in their home country, that's a sign of socioeconomic status. And so that's what they want for you. Exactly going back to what I said, you want your kids to do better, right? I've shared this before, but I wanted to be a doctor when I was little. I thought medicine was cool. I thought science was cool, but I actually thought marine biology was cooler. And then when I got into business and I worked for the Disney company, I thought Disney was cooler because who wouldn't want to just make magical memories for people all day long, all year long, right? And then my dad, after 9/11, on 9/11, actually, he was like, no, you need to be a doctor. And with tears in his eyes and the replay, I was 22 during 9/11. And you could just see the replay of the towers getting hit over and over and over again. And then they start showing the 6 pilots. And it was one after the other, a brown person, a brown person, a brown person. And then you add they're Egyptian. And I'm Egyptian, right? And then they add they're Muslim. I'm Muslim. And my dad is crying. I have not seen that man cry except for when his mom died. And I was like, Dad, why are you crying? And he's like, I came to this country for you to have more opportunities. And these 6 jerks are taking that away. This is not what we stand for. This is not what we are as Egyptian people. This is not what we are as Muslim people. This is extremism. And every religion has their extremism. Christians have their KKK, right? Every religion, every group of people have people that you're like, that's not us. Those are the crazy people off the deep end, right? And that's what happened. And unfortunately, it was such a big display of hate that all of us got branded with that. And so my dad was like, listen, yes, I want you to be a doctor because I do think financially it's more stable. But now it's not that. Now it's about putting faces out there that will repair what those 6 guys did. It's about being proud of your heritage, about who you are and what your religion is, and showing people we are not about the 9/11 stupidity. We are contributors to society. Yeah, that's a lot as a 22-year-old who just wants to work at Disneyland and make memories, to be told that all of a sudden, you're expected to make some big social contribution. And I can't say that I really thought I would go and create a national holiday and create this group. I did not know at 22 I was going to do that. I was just like, how do I get my dad to stop crying? So I was like, yeah, Dad, I'll apply to medical school. And so I did. And I got in the next year and I went. And I went to school in New York. 2002, I started medical school in New York. And I just used all my experience and my love for people and wanting to make magical memories and make life fun for me and for everybody around me. And you add medicine to that, and here I am 20 years later, right? So I think I definitely carried a burden that many people haven't. And also, something I want to say that I don't think I've ever really talked about before, and it's a little vulnerable of me to say, okay, is that, when I came on scene, there was a lot of people who didn't realize what my background was, which is fine. I mean, I don't need to lead with that. It's not like my whole defining identity, right? But when President Trump got elected the first time, that's when my identity became a little bit more apparent, when there was like the Muslim ban and things like that. And I was really trying to stay apolitical, but it's hard because politics, it's personal. There was other groups that started popping up around that time with group leaders that didn't look like me, that were women, and they could say the same exact thing I would say. And they just didn't get as harsh response or this expectation. And it was funny because I started realizing, oh, like the discrimination that I didn't feel in the hospital, because I did pretty well up until I was in attending without feeling super discriminated against as a woman or a woman of color or a Muslim woman or whatever it may be. But I started feeling it from physician women, this idea of like, I should be doing more because I'm brown. I should not monetize my group. Other people who are white, they can monetize their groups just fine, but I could not monetize. There was rules. There were separate rules for me. I couldn't monetize. I couldn't do anything. If I did something, oh, you're selfish. You're a B word. You're not out there for women, right? It was a lot of that backlash. And I was so confused because I was like, how can this other person who is my friend, who's running a group, not get that same feedback? And I remember going to my friend and going like, how could you do this and I can't do this? We're talking to the same people. And she's like, I don't know. I have no idea, right? And then it wasn't until I went and got therapy and coaching, both, that I was like, oh, wait, these are their thoughts about my identity. These are their thoughts about brown or BIPOC people's indebted contributions to society that are still not recognized, that are expected. And so I started having to build a little bit more boundaries around that. And I think that has been the hardest in my career. Not any interaction at the bedside with any of my patients, not anything to do with hospital administration. It was the other physician women who had what I felt inconsistent expectations of me versus other people. And of course, like the way I view it now is a little different. I view it now as like actually an honor in a way, because I was one of the first people on scene of these physician groups. I mean, there were other physician groups before me. There's some of them I didn't even know about, but I was probably one of the bigger ones, the first bigger one that came out. And so, yeah, I'm going to be held to a little bit of a different standard. I'm the first one. I'm so visible that so many people have so many thoughts about what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And I've almost paved the way to make it easier for other group leaders that are out there now. Even the group leaders have made groups against me saying that they hate everything that I'm doing. So they make these other groups, right? I made it easier for them. So to them, if you're listening, you're welcome. Right. So like, I just want to say that, like, I think that was the hard part for me, is understanding that that's part of perfectionism too. Mind you, is this thought that everybody has to like what you're doing and praise you for it. And I had to realize that there's never going to be a time that 100% of people are going to praise you for anything. So I think I had to live with that and feel like, okay, well, am I in integrity with my values? Am I doing something wrong? Because sometimes I do things wrong. I'm not saying I'm not in this like perfectionism, like toxic perfectionism situation where I'm like, everything's perfect. No, I'm not saying that. But like, sometimes I do overstep. I have made mistakes. So when I get feedback from people, I have to be like, okay, wait, are these in line with my values? So that means I have to understand what my values are. My core values are knowledge, love, innovation. These are some of my values, right? So when I see that like I'm getting negative feedback, I could decide, am I going to give it merit or am I not? Right? So then I think, okay, am I in integrity with myself? What's bothering me about what they're saying? Is this a me problem or is this a them problem? Do I allow them to own their thoughts or am I going to absorb some of them? And so that has been where I've grown the most in my career. And that maybe was about 6 or 7 years ago. I think I felt that more as a brown woman. than some of my colleagues. Again, that's my subjective thinking. Maybe my colleagues might be thinking of that and be like, oh no, I got that too. But subjectively, I thought that and even there was other people that were like, yeah, I think it's unfair, like the standard that people are putting you to. But I think that's just part of being brown and also being the biggest and the first. And I think that's just how it goes.
I have so many thoughts running in my head right now, but I want to lead with thanking you for your courage in sharing because it does take a lot. And modeling consistent compassion is the word that comes to my mind whenever I see you show up in places and spaces everywhere. And you have created one of these amazing, biggest platforms where, like I said earlier, physicians, communities have found healing, missing people have gotten connected. I mean, all the things that are always happening on that platform. And to be the human behind something that tremendous, I don't think anything can take away from that.
Hmm. Well, that's really sweet to hear. I will accept all of that. And it's hard to I just feel like I'm just like a normal girl, like just going through life and trying to figure it out. I don't think I personally did any of those things. I think I created a safe space for people to bring their brilliance into a community and allow their vulnerability to lead. I remember going to a medical conference before PMG was made. And for those of you that have gone to conferences since PMG was made, maybe you guys don't have this experience. I'm not really sure. But just so much insecurity. You're walking in, it's like an academic type of feel. Already all the egos are out and you're like, look, oh, am I wearing the right thing? Oh my, are they going to look at me because of XYZ, whatever it may be, right? And then the women, they're all competing with each other, with the men or everybody, right? And so it's like you just become further isolated. And I think that's the best way to keep marginalized communities marginalized is you don't allow them to communicate, to gather, to form community, or to build bridges with other marginalized communities, right? Like that's what we're seeing right now in the political climate is you see the dissolution of DEI, you see the pitting of minorities against each other, like who came here legally and who didn't, and the brown people versus the black people and all these stuff. And what that rhetoric does is it divides the marginalized community so those that are not marginalized can continue to rule, continue to have power, right? And I think what PMG did was it created a space for women of all backgrounds, even though still racism and discrimination, all that. I mean, I just described how I feel it as the admin, right? And I'm sure other people in the group sometimes feel it from other people, but you create a space for all of us to congregate. And when I created PMG, what's really funny is that I got some calls from some large organizations, scared, going what are you doing? What are your plans? I think they thought I was creating this I don't know, overtake coup or something like that. I was like, no, I just really want to know how to hire a nanny. I'm at stage 1. Okay. Now 10 years later, I'm like, hey, maybe we could do that. But it was interesting. I was like, why are they so scared? And then I was getting this feedback, oh, you might not want to do that. That might ruin your career. I got that message. You may want to shut this down. You may want to nip it in the bud. This is going to ruin your career. And I was like, well, if that doesn't ruin my career, I'm already going to ruin it because I can't even figure out how to keep going to work. So one of us is going to ruin it. I might as well allow it to be me, right? And keep moving forward. It's interesting. I don't think I've processed so much that a lot of conversations I've had that I didn't really understand at the time. I don't think I've processed that, but I do think a lot of that has to do with me being a woman and just navigating without many mentors. So the difference between mentorship and coaching, so I have a lot of coaches, which really have created my success. I 1000% attribute coaching to my success. Now, mentorship is a little different than coaching. And I do want to make this mention because as we're talking about perfectionism, somebody might be listening to this hoping to gain some kind of wisdom from me. And I hope you do. But I hope that you take this in what's right for you, kind of make it your own. Mentorship is a little different. Mentorship is I've done this thing. I've created a Facebook group that grew over 100,000 people amongst these 2 groups that I created. I could tell you how to do the same. Here are the steps that you take. Here's the ingredients. Here's the pattern, what you do, right? But what happens when you're creating something that nobody else has created, right? That is you have to be your own mentor. You have to tap into who you are in 5 years and allow her to guide you. And that's through coaching. So like, I just want to say that like, I don't think I'll ever kind of really absorb everything that's happened. There's no way I can. There's no one that's going to be there to help me truly. I mean, they'll be there to like accentuate my learning, but no one's going to hold my hand anymore. This is not residency anymore. Now, this is like the attending life, you know, in the life of like new diseases and new things. Like you're just trying to figure it out with the foundation of the knowledge that you have and knowing that you're going to mess up a lot along the way. And that is opposite of perfection, right? So that's why I give myself a solid 5.
Wow. I'm trying to come up with better words than just wow, because I did prepare and I have thoughts. You just said it so beautifully. It's taking what you hear somebody else say, but please don't copy paste. And there's like no one recipe for success. And that just brings me back to all these narratives that we have created in terms of like black and white thinking, the shoulds, and even the coulds, all of the things that are just keeping us stuck. They're just keeping us confused. And I really appreciate that you do value-based work, and that's incredible. I know that you do that on a much deeper level with the folks that are working with you. And people might think that value-based work, like, what is it? I'm just going to go on the internet and find my values. Like, there's so much there. And the fact that our values can also shift, and that's okay. Again, you're not going to find the set of perfect values and then just cling on to those. So, Dr. Sabry, I personally would love to keep talking, but I also want to honor your time. I want you to visualize there's a woman out there. She's listening to you. She's sitting in the corner and she's feeling not enough because whatever she does, from the way she looks to what she does at work to her parenting skills, nothing is enough. What parting words of wisdom would you say, would you offer her?
Yeah, I think if you're feeling like that, this is your call to action to start to work on it. I mean, I honestly like just noticing that you're doing that is literally you're 50% there. Literally. Like I think there's a lot of people who are just going through life and not really putting a lot of thoughts to it or not even recognizing or reflecting how they're feeling. In fact, if you ask somebody how they're feeling, they won't rarely give you a feeling. They'll give you a lot of thoughts about how they're feeling, a lot of thoughts about their belief system and whatever. Like, oh, like if you ask me, like, how are you feeling? Oh gosh, I'm so tired because blah, 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 blah. They'll keep going on, right? Very different than how are you feeling? Perfect, right? And being okay with that silence of like, what did she say? Perfect. So I think just if you know that you have a problem, that's like a patient. I know not all of your listeners are a patient, are physicians rather, but if you're a doctor and you have a patient and they come in and they're like, I have all these symptoms. Okay. And they're telling you like, I have, chest pain and shortness of breath and this and that, and they're telling you, right? And you're like, I'm so happy you're here because what if you're having a heart attack? What if, and you have your differential of diagnoses that it could be. But say they've had these symptoms for like a month or two, and you're like, well, what are you most worried about? And they're like, I'm scared of having a heart attack. Well, if you had a heart attack, like you probably would not be here in this moment, like talking to me in this way, right? And then they have this like moment of relief of like, okay, you're telling me what it's not and what it is, right? And then what's the plan? Okay, well, the plan is you're going to go do these lab work, and then you're going to go do an X-ray, and you're getting an EKG, and we're going to do this plan. I'm going to take care of you, and that's coaching. That is coaching. You're not sitting there in front of a patient and being like, well, when I had chest pain, this is how I dealt with it. No, you are helping them solve a problem that they are knowing the symptoms of the problem. They may not know what the problem is. They may have a fear of what the problem might be. And that is like just getting them out of their own way and helping them find out the answer. So what if they do have a heart problem? Okay, well, here are your solutions. Here's your options. Like, this is what you got to do. Problems happen. It's what you do next that matters the most. So I will say, if you're listening to this, and I spent too much time in that space of not feeling good enough. Even after PMG was made, 20, 30,000 people. And I remember going to Facebook headquarters. And I will never forget this conversation. It was between me and one of the CEOs of Facebook. His name's Chris Cox. I was meeting with him and he was like, hey, how are you? Going back to exactly what I just told you, right? And I was like, overthinking it. I was like, what do you mean? How am I? What am I supposed to say? Right. And I go like, and I froze. I didn't know what to say because I was like scared and insecure. And I was like, so many things. And I go, the truth? And that's something my dad told me, like, always tell the truth. Like when I went to my medical school interviews, it's like, hey, don't lie. Doctors know when you're lying. So when people ask me in the interviews, like, oh, like, why do you want to be a doctor? I'm like, well, I don't, but I want to have a big social impact. This is the way I'm going to do it. And I want to like help revitalize medicine. And they're like, yeah, let's go. Come on. Right. Like they let me in. Right. So if you tell the truth, you're going to go down the right path or stop yourself from going down the wrong path. So anyways, so I said the truth and he goes, yeah. And I said, I am terrified. Every single day I wake up and I feel like everything that I created is going to implode. That's exactly what I said to him. You know what he said to me?
Yeah.
He goes, yep, sounds about right. He's like, that's exactly how we feel every single day. Normalizing it, exactly what you were talking about earlier, normalizing it, right? And I go, what do I do? Right? So that's like the patient, right? Asking the doctor, what do I do with these symptoms? And he goes, I have 2 pieces of advice. So I'm going to pass this advice to all of you guys. Okay. Because this is what was the defining conversation in my career that helped me create even more success than I am having right now. And then I have one more piece of advice after that. But these are 2 pieces of advice from Chris Cox. And then the other one's going to be from me. Okay. So Chris said, read The Non-Accidental Leader. I think that's the name of the book. And I was like, okay, I could do that. Like, I'm a good student, right. And got it. Then the second thing he said was hire a coach. And I was like, what did he say? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, like a career coach, life coach. And I'm like, is he telling me I don't know how to do exactly what I was like worried about when I first started PMG? Like, is he telling me I don't know what I'm doing? And the truth is, I'm telling myself I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, that's what's happening. Yeah. So anyways, after some drama over like, a year or 2, then I went and hired a coach and then my life was much better. So I will say that and then I started coaching other people because I understand the crazy thoughts that we have, right? And so after I started like kind of getting better, I was like, oh, okay. And then I went to coaching school and I figured that out. And now I get coaching and I also give coaching. So those are the 2 pieces of advice Chris had. Okay. The third piece that I will add to that is learn how to enjoy your success. Like, there's so many, and I think you said this, I don't know if you said that before we started taping or not. I don't remember. You were like, there's so many resources out there of like 3 steps to this, 5 steps to that, right? There's all these hot takes, like this is a good hook on like TikTok, like 3 steps to creating $100,000 in the next year, right? Whatever it may be, right? And people are like, oh, I want to create $100,000. And if it's just so easy, like tell me what the 3 steps are, right? But here's the thing. There are so many resources that teach you how to become successful, how to get into medical school, how to survive residency, how to get into a residency, how to survive fellowship, whatever it may be, right? There are very little to no resources that teaching you how to maintain that. Okay. And I'm going to tell you right now what those steps are to maintain it, because I have perfected that part of my life. I will say that with a strong 10 on that. But one is recognize that you are successful. Recognize the success you have had, right? That's like that kid swimming. Recognize that you made it to the end. Okay. Second is like, own it. Own it. Yeah, I did that. You know how many, if you guys look back at 10 years ago when I did interviews and someone said, oh, you created PMG. Oh, no, I did it. It was really, yeah, I did. I didn't know how brilliant I was going to be, but man, the version of me 10 years ago that didn't know what they were doing, they were brilliant back then. I'm even more brilliant now. Accept it, own it, right? And then the third step is enjoy it. If you don't enjoy your success, you're never going to want to create more. And what I find is that when people don't enjoy their success, they don't create more, they actually have something called success intolerance. So what happens is that you create all the success, but you're kind of like miserable because you're just treading water. You're just trying to stay afloat. And then when someone like gives you another offer to do something, or you have another idea, you're like, well, how am I going to juggle that? I already am really overwhelmed. Or I got here by hustling, so I'm going to run out of gas. And so I think when you recognize and own and enjoy, it gives you a different foundation and a different level of comfort with yourself to create more, if you choose to. And if you don't choose to, I personally think the most successful people actually learn how to enjoy it, right? And that's not just like buying cars or yachts or whatever it is, going on vacations. That's not what I'm talking about. Because a lot of people do those things to escape their life. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like actually for enjoying it. A lot of people don't think I practice medicine still, but I do. I'm like, I practice medicine. I'm actually full time right now, which is like, it was kind of accidental, but on purpose at the same time. I freaking love going to work. I love it so much. I am like opposite of burnt out. Like I show up and everyone's like, oh, it's going to be a good day because Sabry's here. And I take the time to get to know my staff. Like, hey, what's going on? I know something about all of them because I truly, genuinely care. I love all of my team members. And if any of them are listening today, like they'll know I love you guys so much. I tell them that all the time. Do you know what I appreciate about you today? Blah, 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 blah. Right? I'm there. I'm emotionally available for my patients. I mean, and yes, I still make mistakes and all that stuff. Right? I'm not saying I'm perfect, right? But I think I'm able to be emotionally available for other people because I'm emotionally available for myself. And so I accept it. I own it. I enjoy it. And then I go create more. And I think what I'm hoping, going back to something that you said earlier, I have 4 girls and a boy. I have 5 kids. And I'm just hoping that me loving myself more will be a good mentorship model for them to do the same. Because they have all those other external cues from school and TV and all this other stuff, right? They always have that. But, I'm just hoping that by me showing them how to like live life, that will be a good tool for them to have a marker of what perfectionism looks like for them. So that's what I'll leave with you guys. And I cannot wait to read your book. I cannot wait to see all of these other interviews that you're doing so I can create more wisdom. And if there's anything else I could do to support you or anybody else, let me know.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sabry. On that very powerful note, we will conclude. And I'm going to add links to your incredible work. And if you don't know what PMG is and you're a physician mom, oh my goodness, then please reach out and connect as well. Thank you so much for your valuable insights today.
Thank you for having me.
This episode is part of a special series and my budding book project on unmasking perfectionism. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. Just a quick reminder, while I am a physician, I'm not your physician, and nothing in this podcast is medical advice or any kind of professional advice. Everything shared here is based on my personal experiences, and the views expressed are entirely my own. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love for you to rate, review, subscribe, and share the show with anyone who might need a little inspiration to redefine their own version of success. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep reimagining success one small step at a time.